History is built on documents, eyewitness accounts, and the slow march of time. But occasionally, an event emerges that refuses to fit neatly into the timeline, an event that suggests time itself may not be as rigid as we believe. This is the story of two respectable British women, two ordinary tourists in 1901, who walked into the gardens of Versailles and found themselves somewhere else. The event is known today as the Versailles Time Slip or the Moberly, Jourdain Incident. Over a century later, the mystery has not faded. If anything, it has grown. This is a journey into eyewitness testimony, historical investigation, psychology, paranormal theory, and the strange possibility that a fracture in time opened beneath the hottest sun of a French summer. Charlotte Ann Moberly. Charlotte Moberly was born into privilege. The daughter of a bishop, educated in languages, literature, and music, she would eventually become the first principal of St. Hugh's College, Oxford. By 1901, she was a formidable academic woman, logical, discerning, practiced in critical thinking. She was not superstitious. She was not prone to fantasy. Her colleague, Elena Jourdain, was equally formidable. A scholar of French history and literature, a meticulous writer, and later, vice principal at St. Hugh's, Jourdain was known to be introspective, strict, analytical. Some said she had an intimidating presence. Both women were educated, socially respected, and trained thinkers. They were not the type to invent ghost stories. Both were middle-aged, rational, and unprepared for the event that would define their lives. It was August 10, 1901, when the two women left Paris to tour the Palace of Versailles. They had never been there before. The palace itself was breathtaking, but crowded. Tourists pressed in every direction, and the heat shimmered in the air. So they decided to step outside to the famous Petit Trianon, a small chateau in the gardens, once beloved by Queen Marie Antoinette. They walked and walked, but the path was confusing, without clear signage. Both would later describe an uncanny sensation that began almost immediately, a feeling of oppression, a dreamlike heaviness. But they ignored it and continued. And then things started to shift. As they followed the shaded path, the gardens grew unnaturally still. No birdsong, no wind, no movement. The sunlight dimmed, though the sky was clear. Moberly later wrote, "Everything suddenly looked unnatural, flat and lifeless like a painted scene." Then they saw two men on a small farm cart. The men wore long green coats, three-cornered hats, and appeared to be cutting grass with old-fashioned tools. Their clothing struck the women as odd, too old-fashioned even for French workers of the era. But the men simply stared at the women expressionless, as if they were watching creatures out of place. Jourdain whispered to Moberly, "These men look strange." They continued walking. What happened next became the centerpiece of the mystery. The women reached a small pavilion, but what they saw near it was chilling. A tall man stood near the building's door, dressed in a cloak and wide-brimmed hat. His face was deeply lined, his skin almost grey, and he wore an expression of intense hostility. Even worse, his face was marked by a long pitted scar. Jourdain described him as evil and repellent. His presence was so unnerving that the women felt a bolt of fear. Moberly recalled, "The man's expression was the most malevolent I have ever seen. He silently motioned for them to walk down a particular path. They obeyed out of pure dread. Later, historians tried to identify him. Some claimed he resembled a Revolutionary Guard, or perhaps Comte de Vaudreuil, a known associate of Marie Antoinette. But no definitive match was ever found. The path led them toward the Petit Trianon. And then they saw her. A woman sitting alone on a stool, sketching the scene before her. She wore a light silk dress, wide sash, and a large white hat, her hair styled fashionably, but in a style not of 1901. Her appearance, clothing, and mannerisms were unmistakably 18th century. Moberly later insisted, "I saw a lady who I instantly believed to be Marie Antoinette." The woman didn't acknowledge the two strangers. She simply sat in the sunlight, sketching, as if the world around her belonged to her. Jourdain didn't see the woman. Moberly saw her sharply. This discrepancy became a major point of debate among researchers. Was it a hallucination? A mirage? A figure from the past? Or had Moberly glimpsed a moment in time that had not yet faded? Just as suddenly as the strange atmosphere had descended, it lifted. A young man jogged up to them, modern, cheerful, dressed normally for 1901. He pointed them clearly toward the petty Trianon. The spell was broken. The gardens were bright again. The air was normal. Voices echoed. Birds sang again. The two women looked at each other, shaken. Neither spoke of the experience for hours. Days later, they compared their memories. It quickly became obvious what they had seen did not belong to 1901. They began researching historical records, old maps, personal accounts, fashion archives, and what they uncovered shocked them. Many details they had seen that day matched Versailles as it was in the late 1700s. The pavilion they had visited. It wasn't supposed to be there in 1901, it had been torn down long before. But it did exist in the 1770s. The clothing, accurate for the era. The scarred man's attire, consistent with descriptions of royal guards during the French Revolution. The mysterious sketching woman. Marie Antoinette was documented as having sketched outdoors at Versailles. Every piece fit the past, not the present. In 1911, 10 years later, the women published their findings under pseudonyms in a book titled An Adventure. The book became a sensation. Critics erupted. Some accused the women of fabricating the story. Some insisted it was a shared hallucination. Some believed they had encountered ghosts. But another theory proposed something even stranger. They stepped through a fold in time. A phenomenon people now call a time slip. A time slip is not a time machine, not intentional, not technological. It is a momentary collapse of temporal boundaries. A natural anomaly. A glitch in the fabric of time. Reports of time slips exist around the world. It's Liverpool, England. Bold Street. Mexico City. It's Edinburgh. St. Augustine. People sometimes step into the past for seconds or minutes before being pulled back. Theories include 1. Residual time recording. Time memory imprinted in a location. 2. Parallel reality overlap. A momentary merging of two timelines. 3. Psychic projection. Unconscious time perception. 4. Wormholes or temporal energy vortices. The most science fiction, but favored by some physicists. But in every major time slip case, the witness is ordinary, not seeking the paranormal. Like Moberly and Jourdain. After their book's publication, researchers uncovered even more evidence supporting the women's strange encounter. Evidence 1. The pavilion. The pavilion they described did exist in the 18th century, but had disappeared long before 1901. Yet the women saw it clearly. Evidence 2. Clothing accuracy. Moberly described a ribboned green bodice and wide skirt, precisely the style Marie Antoinette wore during the 1780s. Evidence 3. The scarred man. Descriptions match known Revolutionary Guards who once patrolled the Trianon. Evidence 4. The sketching scene. Marie Antoinette often sketched at the exact location Moberly identified. Evidence 5. Correct map layout. Paths the women described were not part of the 1901 layout, but were documented in 18th century maps they had never seen. Of course, not everyone believed. Skeptics argued. 1. Misremembered details. But both women wrote their accounts immediately, separately. 2. Confabulation. But too many details matched historical facts unknown to them. 3. Emotional stress. They were relaxed tourists, not stressed. 4 historic actors or gardeners in costume. There were no reenactments at Versailles in 1901. Not a single one. 5 a shared hallucination. Impossible because their descriptions were different, yet complementary. Nothing fully explained the event away. Researchers later discovered an eerie coincidence. August 10 was the anniversary of a pivotal moment in French history, the day in 1792 when the monarchy began to fall. Some theorists suggest the date itself may act as a historical echo. A moment where past and present blur, as if the gardens themselves replay the moment. Like a record needle skipping back 100 years. Modern researchers have used geographic reconstruction, psychological profiling, historic fashion records, spatial synchronicity, electromagnetic field theories, quantum theories of time. Yet nothing contradicts the women's core testimony. In fact, modern quantum physics suggests time may be less linear than we assume. Some physicists propose that all moments exist simultaneously. And under the right conditions, 2 moments may briefly touch. Both women stood by their story until their deaths. They never recanted, never altered their account. Their diaries remain in archives. Their sketches and notes are preserved. Their route can still be walked today. Thousands of visitors claim to feel the same eerie heaviness in the garden near the Petit Trianon, especially in late summer. Some say they've seen figures in old-fashioned clothing. Some hear faint music. Some feel watched. The gardens remain quiet, like a memory waiting to repeat. The Versailles Time Slip remains one of the most convincing paranormal encounters in recorded history. Perhaps certain places, especially those filled with emotion, history, and memory, retain an imprint strong enough to echo into the present. Perhaps, on August 10, 1901, 2 women accidentally stepped into that echo. And for a moment, the world between centuries became thin. Thank you for watching, and if you want more stories just like this, subscribe, hit the bell, and join me on the next journey. Until then, keep your eyes open. Some mysteries never sleep.